We're grateful. The Beat with Ari Melber starts right now. Hi, Ari. Happy Thursday.
Thank you so much. Hi, Nicole. Thanks to everybody. Welcome to The Beat. I'm Ari Melber. We begin with Trump's war on Iran. It's threatening now to really metastasize into a global economic crisis, and the strategy has reached levels of incoherence and public contradiction. World markets very much rattled today. Here's some video from Iran. The largest natural gas field in the world is on fire. That's after some Israeli strikes. Iran has hit oil and gas infrastructure throughout the Middle East. We have footage there from Saudi Arabia. Cycle of escalating attacks on energy targets. Trump tried to tamp this down, and he's threatening to escalate his own attacks, though, on energy targets. He says the U.S. will massively blow up Iran's largest gas field if Iran strikes more oil fields. The Treasury Secretary also taking this kind of approach, saying the U.S. is considering rolling back sanctions on Iranian oil.
We had a break the glass plan across the administration and at Treasury. We unsanctioned Russian oil. We knew that there were about 130 million barrels on the water, and we created supply that is beyond the Straits of Hormuz. In the coming days, we may unsanction the Iranian oil that's on the water. It's about 140 million barrels.
Unsanctioned Iranian oil? That, of course, is a reversal of something that has been a long-standing way to have impact on Iran. Bloomberg reports doing that would be a reversal of policy, since the U.S. has used energy sanctions to bring Tehran to the negotiating table over nukes. The price of crude jumping $100 to $119 a barrel. Then it kind of moved around and landed around 108. Experts say gas prices could reach $4 a gallon. The Pentagon is preparing to ask Congress to pay this bill. And this is a rolling, rising tab, $200 billion. Those numbers only go up. They don't go down. There's also reporting the Pentagon is eyeing a new phase, considering deploying thousands of U.S. troops to the Middle East. This would be to secure the Strait of Hormuz, as well as a hub for oil exports. Reuters reporting on that. Trump has been sending mixed signals.
The Iranian regime has told Sky News, if you put boots on the ground in Iran, it will be another Vietnam. Are you afraid of that?
No, I'm really not afraid of anything.
What are the circumstances where you send in ground troops? How are you thinking about that?
You know, I'm not going to answer it. Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason.
I'm not putting troops anywhere. If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you. But I'm not putting troops.
Wouldn't tell you, but a bit of a mix there. It's contradictory messages on the troops, on the timeline, and the end game. What's the rationale, and how do we know when we're done? Top intelligence official Tulsi Gabbard was grilled about Iran and whether it poses a threat.
There is no imminent threat of nuclear breakout. Did you deliver that assessment to the president?
I have delivered the intelligence community's assessments to the president.
Were they weeks away of achieving a nuclear weapon? Yes or no?
Congressman, this is a serious matter.
Yes or no? Were they weeks away?
It would be
yes
a disservice to you and the American people to answer this question with a mere yes or no.
We're now joined by Jared Bernstein, Chair of the Council on Economic Advisors under President Biden. Larry Pfeiffer, National Security Intelligence Expert. He served in Bush 43's CIA and the Obama National Security Council, and we should note, has been a technical advisor. Start with you, Jared, on the economics. Why is the U.S. right now acting so desperate under the Trump administration, talking about unsanctioning? And is this something we can easily back out of? Can we go back to where we were before they started the war?
Well, it's getting tougher and tougher to back out. I don't think easy would be a word that comes to mind, especially when you start seeing, as some of your clips just showed, the destruction of infrastructure. One of the things we know is that when these types of conflicts end, if oil production infrastructure has been destroyed, it of course takes much longer to resume production and refinement. But in terms of why this is so challenging, before this war started, the Trump administration had a really tough record when it comes to affordability, which of course is the #1 concern of so many American households right now. The tariffs, of course, exacerbated that problem. Well, now we have it hitting the energy market markets in ways that, again, you just described. The price of gas, the retail price of gas is up about 90 cents a gallon in just a few weeks. Diesel's up 142. And this doesn't just affect people filling their tanks. This affects the food market. This affects groceries. I even noticed today that the 30-year fixed rate mortgage rate has spiked up 40 basis points, 0.4%, on the basis of some of the financial dynamics around the war. So it's very costly to American households at a time when they're most concerned about affordability issues.
Larry, same question, and we're seeing this kind of odd telegraphing from the White House, which seems like short-term planning. We'll unsanction, do a loophole for a little bit, then get back to normal. But your view of all this?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there in terms of short-term planning. This appears, if I was a foreign intelligence service and I was looking at what's happening with America's management of this war with Iran, I would walk away saying there is no interagency process affording the president detailed and necessary expertise. You have services, the diplomatic corps, the intelligence corps, the Defense Department, other places, FBI, Homeland Security, that have been gutted of expertise, either intentionally or unintentionally through these early retirements. You have apparently inadequate, maybe the most polite way to describe it, management of this small coalition we built with Israel. You have Tulsi Gabbard today up on the Hill saying, telling Congress that we have differing objectives in this war, and she seemed to be okay with that.
Yeah. We also had this official who's resigned with a bundle of sort of critiques, and the administration's been lashing out at him. He spoke to, it's Joe Kent, spoke to Tucker Carlson. Larry, take a listen.
The argument that there was an imminent threat, as in Iran was planning to attack us immediately, that just simply did not exist. There was no intelligence that said, hey, on whatever day it was, March 1st, the Iranians are going to launch this big sneak attack. They're going to do some kind of a 9/11 Pearl Harbor, et cetera. They're going to attack one of our bases. There was none of that intelligence.
Larry?
So not a big fan of Joe Kent. Didn't think he should have gotten the job even to begin with. But as they say, a broken clock can be correct twice a day. I think this is an instance where he's speaking truth to power. There does not appear to have been any change in intelligence since a year ago when Tulsi Gabbard went up on the Hill and said that Iran had not made a decision to recommence its nuclear weapons development program. We've subsequently had the 12-day war where the infrastructure to support such an effort was quote unquote obliterated. And today up on the Hill, you didn't have anybody willing to commit to the notion that there was intelligence indicating that there was an imminent threat. Instead, you have Tulsi Gabbard dodging behind this notion that only the president can decide what is an imminent threat. As a guy who worked 32 years in the intel community, the history of that intel community is such that, it was founded on the fact that we didn't provide sufficient warning before Pearl Harbor, and the most significant reforms to that intel community happened after 9/11, another instance where we didn't provide enough specific warning for an administration to act. So the intel community takes that responsibility very seriously to provide that imminent warning.
Jared, where do you see this going on the oil and economic front?
Well, there's a phenomenon in this market. It's called rockets and feathers, another way of saying that the gas price takes the elevator up and the stairs down. It's kind of a reflection on some of the things I was talking about earlier. Once this war ends, this is not a flip the switch moment to get things back to where they were. Oil prices, gas prices shoot up very quickly, but they come down quite slowly. I'm pretty confident we're going to be looking at gas above $4 a gallon pretty soon. We're almost at $3.90 right now, and it's been rising fast. And it's been very sensitive to sort of the just degrading of the infrastructure and the way the war has been prosecuted, as per your last discussion with Larry. So I see this as being a real squeeze to American consumers. You know, one of the things the administration has been touting is that average tax refunds are supposed to go up this year because of the budget bill, maybe something like $600 or $700 per household that gets a refund. But we're looking at an increase in the gas price, according to our estimation, based on the dynamics I've just described, that's in that same ballpark. So basically, this gas price increase is going to eat people's refunds pretty much fully through. And so, you know, that's the kind of pinch that households are facing on the back of this war.
And Jared, you've served in a White House. Everyone says they're doing the work, but politics suffuses everything. Trump's not shy about that. He just lost a big push to try to strong-arm the Fed into taking on economic policies, juicing the economy, going into the midterms. He admits it, although he lost. How do you, if you have a negative or skeptical view of this president, how do you square that whole thing, which was trying to get the economy better, going into the midterms for his political reasons, and he might say, because he thinks it would be better for the country, with a now open-ended oil mess of a war that, as you just described, and anyone can look at the pump or the markets and see the problem. How do you square that with him roiling the markets, which is the opposite of what he wanted to do to make things, quote unquote, better for the midterms?
Well, it's unsquarable. In other words, what the president told a lot of people, even back to the campaign, is that I'm going to make your life more affordable. You'll see lower prices, lower interest rates. He comes into office, and well before this war, he starts making your life less affordable by slapping tariffs on virtually all of our imports. Then he launches this war, which is having the effects we just described on the gas price.
So, but what does unsquarable mean? You think he doesn't get it? He's incompetent?
I think that I think that he is a phony, quote, populist. I think his message he tells the people what he wants them to hear, and then he goes out and acts in ways that are antithetical to that. He's going, and Larry's right. He's just going based on his instincts, which have proven to be, really pretty bad. He has way too much self-confidence in his knowledge, which of this region is just remarkable. The mess they've gotten us into this quickly.
Yeah. Jared Bernstein, Larry Pfeiffer kicking us off on two aspects of this. Thank you very much. I want to tell folks tonight Congress is putting the heat on the Trump DOJ, Epstein's lawyer under oath. But next, we just talked about Donald Trump's approach to the Fed. He's using the same failed playbook against James Comey, a brand new subpoena against the FBI director who stood up to him. I have a special legal breakdown on this and a guest, and we're back in 90 seconds. Breaking news today, DOJ subpoenaing former FBI Director James Comey, another sign that Trump's DOJ continues to target his perceived enemies even after getting slapped down in court. Trump has long resented Comey as an independent official, an FBI director that he could not control or politicize in those early days of his first term. In fact, if you followed politics long enough, it was one of the big first clashes and then got wrapped up into the Mueller probe. But Trump publicly called for selective prosecution of Comey, which is illegal. Now, the last case fell apart in November because the DOJ's temporary prosecutor who went after Comey was found to be serving illegally. The case thrown out. Now, those defeated allegations were thin. It was about Comey back when he was in office, and then afterward, when he was testifying about what he did in office, whether he misled Congress. These new subpoenas go back even farther. They try to allege that U.S. officials, including Comey, who handled intelligence about Russia and dealt with probes into Trump's campaign, were somehow part of a criminal conspiracy, according to Axios reporting. Now, let's just be clear. When you have an honest DOJ and there's news of subpoenas or charges against someone, it usually tends to come with evidence and the prospect that a subject is in the wrong. In other words, we follow all the evidence, but you say, oh, there's probably something there, whether it amounts to a crime or not. Nowadays, with this DOJ under Trump and Bondi, it has become the opposite. Probes of most top government officials tend to add to the evidence against the DOJ and not those people. It adds to the evidence of a quite blatantly huge illegal enemies list. because Trump has illicitly asked, often in public, to abuse DOJ powers to go after the people you see on your screen, to probe and investigate, to indict or arrest, and even jail people who exercise their rights to disagree with them or their oath to the Constitution. If this list looks almost comically large, it is, because a lot of these in green, for example, fell apart. But these are the many people that we know of that they're trying to go after. It includes the current federal officials like the Fed chair. These efforts have failed. Trump just lost another bid to subpoena Chairman Powell, which we discussed on tonight's program. That was just last week. The judge dealing Trump a loss, publicly showing he was powerless to misuse subpoenas as a form of, quote, harassment. And that's the word the judge used. So tonight we have a serious report of the misuse, possibly, of more subpoenas to harass someone who's already been cleared several times, Mr. Comey, but you can't look at it alone. We're going to bring you the facts without fear or favor here, even though this enemies list, as you see in the upper middle, includes journalists now. Don Lemon indicted by the same DOJ. But taken together, this isn't just a story about James Comey and Donald Trump. It's a story about the wholesale abuse of the DOJ to go after these enemies. Now, if I had to update this with some fairness and say, on the other hand, some of these cases went to trial and landed in convictions, I would tell you if that happened. But a year in, they are zero when it comes to closing and winning any of these cases. I'm joined by Barbara McQuaid, former U.S. Attorney and MS Now legal analyst. I mention all that because we could go into the particulars of this Comey subpoena, and I'm curious to hear your view of it as described. But I don't think we can accurately at this point deal with the Trump DOJ without looking at the pattern. How do you see it tonight?
I think that's absolutely right, Ari. I mean, I'm glad you included on the screen there not only Jerome Powell and Don Lemon, but how about the 6 members of Congress who merely restated the law accurately and had an effort at indicting all of them. And so, you know, I know sometimes this Justice Department is accused of being Donald Trump's personal law firm, but it's more than that. Law firms do zealously advocate on behalf of their client, but they usually do so within the parameters of the law and ethics. And what we're seeing by this Justice Department are these efforts to find charges against people where, at least in some instances, we know there are none. And so I am concerned, you know, about this case in particular, Ari. We know that there have already been 3 investigations into the origins of the Russia investigation. There was the Mueller report. There was an Inspector General report. There was the John Durham investigation. And all of them found only some minor problems, and those have already been dealt with. We also know that the Mueller report was final in 2019. You know, my math's not that great, but I think it's beyond the 5-year statute of limitations. Sure. And so it's very difficult to imagine that there is a real case here. But certainly, there is the ability to make people's lives miserable. There is the ability to create at least an impression that there was something phony going on about this. And what's different here, Ari, from what we saw in the Powell Federal Reserve case of last week, is that it's not Chief Judge James Boasberg who is going to be overseeing these subpoenas, and in that case, quashed subpoenas because he found a mountain of evidence that the investigation was pretextual. But it appears that this investigation is being run out of Fort Pierce, Florida, under the watchful eye of none other than Judge Aileen Cannon. And so it may be that a little judge shopping is going on here as well.
Yeah, you look at the judge shopping and you look at the wider pattern. Should honest judges keep that in mind? We're always told that judges look only at the case before them. But at a certain point, this habitual abuse has led some judges, that we saw, you mentioned the quashing of the subpoena. There's been a clash in New Jersey about the misuse of prosecutors under Trump. We're seeing some judges act more quickly to be more skeptical of the government, whereas, as I mentioned, in normal times, there's regular order and there's some deference to the DOJ.
Yeah, there's ordinarily this phrase that's referred to as the presumption of regularity. That is that government lawyers take an oath to support the Constitution, that they are acting in good faith. And when it comes to grand jury subpoenas, they are entitled to a very broad scope of deference. It isn't even that it has to be relevant to an investigation, just that it could be relevant to finding some discovery that might be relevant to an investigation. And yet what you say is so important. That is, this administration, though, time and again has demonstrated that it has lost that presumption of regularity. So I do think that we are going to see many judges taking more skeptical eye, as has already been done. But I don't know that we're going to get that from Judge Aileen Cannon. I also worry, Ari, about what this does to the Justice Department going forward. While we do have what appear to be very politically motivated cases, there are also honorable assistant U.S. attorneys all over the country who are investigating real cases of kidnapping and human trafficking and bank robbery and other kinds of things. And if the Justice Department loses this presumption of regularity because of the abuse that we're seeing by the Justice Department, I worry that public safety and the American people will be poorly served in the future because of the way this Justice Department has kind of ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, this is why we can't have nice Justice Departments, as the saying goes. Barbara McQuade, we do appreciate your clarity, your sobriety on these kind of stories, and we're going to stay on these, even if it can seem exhausting to look at the list we showed you. So thank you. Later tonight, I have a fact check for Megyn Kelly and Secretary of State Rubio. Stick around for that. The Epstein scandal continues to give Pam Bondi a different set of problems. We're going to get into that and the evidence about an Epstein lawyer hiding material out of their safe. That's next. There's been a lot going on with the Epstein probe in Congress and what Democrats say are evasions by the Trump DOJ. Democrats say the Attorney General may be trying to evade a lawful subpoena forcing her to testify on this because she's been dodging. The House Oversight Chairman Comer appears to be backing Bondi, although he was a part of the committee pursuing the subpoena, but now we're talking about what it means to really comply. He does say yesterday's briefing would not replace, of course, the public process of testifying under oath. There's also testimony coming in from Epstein's longtime lawyer who told Congress he just didn't know about Epstein's wrongdoing. Now, people are entitled to a lawyer and a criminal defense lawyer, but there are larger questions here. There are documents suggesting the facilitation of payments to women, as well as directing witnesses to avoid law enforcement. And so, while no one should be denied a lawyer, even if you face the most heinous allegations in the world under U.S. constitutional law, that does not mean that lawyers can just do anything. And so there are still questions, we've probed some of them, about the people around Epstein and whether they cross the line into joining in his crimes. Congress is going through the unredacted files. Congressman Goldman yesterday said that one unredacted version of an email, which was heavily blacked out, raises questions, that it contradicts some of Trump's defenses about why he ever broke ties with Epstein.
This document here was redacted to the public. It was unredacted to Congress, and it completely disputes everything that Donald Trump has said about Jeffrey Epstein, about what he knew about the allegations, about his disgusting behavior. If the Attorney General is covering up this information that she then reveals to Congress, what else is she covering up about Donald Trump's involvement?
This is active. The pressure and the evidence is pouring out as we speak. That was, of course, just yesterday, middle of this week. The Daily Beast reports about that same email that it would suggest Epstein maybe was never even asked to leave Trump's club and that Trump may have been on Epstein's plane and at his home. Now, to be clear, this is an email out of the larger tranche of files. MS now hasn't confirmed the underlying validity of those documents. Trump hasn't been accused of criminal wrongdoing related to those documents. But even if they simply show that Trump has been lying for years about why he broke up his friendship with Epstein, that is a matter of major public interest. Now, Congress is doing some of this work, however delayed. Today, the Epstein lawyer, Darren Indyke, was being grilled. He's one of the two key lawyers for Epstein. Now, as I mentioned, they say they were just doing their jobs. Other people question whether they took a role as lawyer and turned it into fixer or worse, or ever knowledgeably, knowingly got involved in the criminal scheme and facilitating payments that you know are for breaking the law is different than, for example, providing someone legal defense. Now, take reporting about one of them, Richard Kahn. He was a longtime accountant Now, Congress grilled him as well. He was previously questioned by the FBI about the contents of this safe. Take a good look, because the BBC has reported, based again on a lot of the new information we're getting, that when the FBI originally raided Epstein's New York mansion back in 2019, the very day he was arrested, agents forced open the safe you just saw, and they found valuables like diamonds and cash, but they also found binders of CDs and hard drives. Now, stay with me here, because it gets interesting. There was an issue allegedly with the warrant, and so they didn't leave with all the items. Then they returned with a new warrant. The BBC notes that then the safe had been emptied while they were gone. The FBI documents, including the newly released Epstein files, give more color to this. Now, Khan then told the mansion staff, pack up 2 suitcases with the contents of that safe that he was going to take to his home, according to the FBI. That could allegedly include things like CDs and hard drives, which makes you wonder, what did this sex trafficker want with CDs in his safe? After the FBI spoke to Khan's then lawyer, he agreed to hand over those suitcases, allegedly untouched. He didn't want agents coming to his house, though, and declined to say who told him to remove the items. This is when your accountants need accountants and your lawyers need lawyers. Khan's lawyer telling the BBC his client did cooperate with the FBI, and that is BBC's reporting. We haven't independently gotten additional information, but these are all the questions that, with the new files, really make you wonder why the DOJ seemed to operate this way. Why was evidence allowed to be removed from the safe? Did they confirm they got all the right CDs? Why didn't they pursue these leads more? Part of this story, of course, seems to continue to revolve around the politics and the pressure and the blame game. But another big part of it is still about the victims and the evidence and how long it took to get any kind of justice, and why, even when you had an FBI warrant, you could go in, take stuff out of that safe, and then return it on your good word and promise a little later on. Nancy Erica Smith, who takes no prisoners, is my special guest on this next.
Will you commit to complying with that subpoena and appearing for a closed-door deposition?
I made it crystal clear I will follow the law.
But does that mean you will? Does that mean you will appear?
We sat there saying, anything you want to ask us, anything you want to ask us, and they screamed, C-SPAN wasn't there, one of them, and then they stormed out of the meetings.
That's the Attorney General's take on this clash over whether she will follow the subpoena to testify under oath in public. She says C-SPAN, like it's a dirty word, it's actually part of how congressional hearings are broadcast for every agency. We're joined now by attorney Nancy Erica Smith. She has done civil rights work and represented numerous victims of workplace harassment and sexual assault. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's start with what sounds like a very unusual situation with Epstein's former lawyer and accountant. Mm-hmm. Congress is finally taking this testimony. I walked through some of the odd scenarios, including that safe. We can put the photo back up. Your view of all that?
Well, the FBI has never been great on sexism. I mean, the FBI has been sued for sexism and misogyny many, many times. So I think that the FBI, in this case, certainly decided to protect the powerful and the connected, and women and young girls just didn't matter, because it's outrageous that they left the safe and somebody was able to take stuff out of it, bring it to his home, and then they didn't show up to the home with a warrant. For the whole house. I mean, they wouldn't. What do you mean he wouldn't let the FBI in the house? It's all absurd.
And when you're dealing with someone like Epstein and you find out that he has CDs and hard drives, and you know that he has a surveillance system, and you know now from the files that were released that he would talk to people about, let me get the records of this and the email of that and prove where people were. What other questions does that raise in a competent probe of what's on the CDs?
Yeah, in a competent probe, well, many of the young victims have said that he videoed them. So and there's certainly some evidence in the files that he was blackmailing people, that he would say things like, well, I would never tell your secrets. Well, that's a way of saying, maybe I'll tell your secrets. So the CDs, they may have settlement agreements. They may have legal documents. They may have information about the numerous shell corporations. It says that the investigation was never serious from the time that it was dismantled and he got a sweetheart deal in Florida right up until the time he died.
And so everyone's entitled to a lawyer. And, when people hear us say that, I mean that. There's some people in this country who don't care about the constitutional rule of law. We do.
Yes.
And so you could be accused of a quadruple homicide. You get a lawyer in this country under the Constitution.
Right.
But you don't get a fixer or a co-conspirator or a mob lawyer who's a criminal. There is a difference there. And so I don't want to be misheard as impugning anyone's right to counsel. But Mr. Indike says to Congress, now that these questions late are being asked, he says to explain all of this money stuff, Mr. Epstein, quote, had difficulty accessing credit cards from banks. He required cash to pay for expenses like maintenance, repairs, and daily household needs, meals, gifts, gratuities, and fuel for his private aircraft. Is this a valid and competent defense for a sophisticated attorney? Or did he know, or should he have known, that the amount of cash in shell corporations and other activities suggested future misuse of funds for sex trafficking?
Yeah, well, I think it's highly unlikely that he didn't know. It's highly unlikely. I don't have the facts. But we do know that Khan, Epstein's accountant, testified that the Epstein estate settled with Jane Doe number 4, a very important Jane Doe. Jane Doe number 4's files were hidden until Trump bombed Iran and changed the subject. Jane Doe's number 4 files were only found missing because of the Maxwell discovery. And people noticed that Bates stamps, numbers that lawyers use to identify documents, were missing. So we get, finally, right after bombing Iran, we get the Jane Doe number 4 files. Now, lying to the FBI is a crime. Martha Stewart went to jail for it. All people interviewed by the FBI are told that. Jane Doe number 4 alleged to the FBI that Epstein abused her when she was 13 and that Trump abused her when she was 15. Khan, Epstein's accountant, testified that the Epstein estate settled with Jane Doe number 4 for both Epstein and Trump. His lawyer tried to walk that back. Indike refused to confirm or deny that. Now, how do we get to the bottom of that? Congress passes a law invalidating all NDAs from the Trump or the Trump Organization, from Epstein, any of his entities, from the estate, or based on any activities at the Epstein properties. Let's have the truth. We want the truth, no NDAs.
Yeah, you're speaking to how we could get to the facts. And as we always say, if the facts clear people, if you remove the muzzle and the facts clear people, great. Then the country benefits from that. And if the facts are complicated, let's get into them, as you say. And you know how this works. I think you're making important points here. Thanks, as always, for joining us.
Thank you. Nice
Appreciate it. Nancy Erica Smith. We're going to fit in a break. When we come back, the fact check I promised you. Donald Trump's diplomat, Marco Rubio. We are going to show you how he failed Megyn Kelly's test and then some.